Our guest today is a world-renowned marketing guru who's also playing an important role in shaping the Tata Group of tomorrow, Dr. Nirmalya Kumar. It's a pleasure having you on the show. And my first question would be on Vision 2025. It's an ambitious target that has been laid down by Cyrus Mistry and his team, you included. And you have a big responsibility being the chief strategist of the group. Can you throw more light on how this roadmap going to develop for achieving that ambitious target?
So let me first reiterate the Vision 2025 because perhaps many of your viewers won't know what the Tata Vision 2025 is. So basically the Vision 2025 says that we would like 25% of the world's population then to experience the Tata's commitment to improving the quality of life for its customers and communities. And as a result, we hope that we'll be among the 25 most admired corporate brands in the world and have a market cap which will be roughly equivalent to the 25th most valuable company in the world.
Of course. So I said it's ambitious because you're looking at a market capitalization from a little over $100 billion to over about $350 billion. And you're looking to touch, as you said, the lives of about 2 billion of the population by 2025. And this is the first time that Tata Group has also spoken about, in fact, the revenue targets, also the operating margins going forward. It is ambitious and you have a large conglomerate. Are we going to see a large part of it being driven by restructuring within the group? What is the roadmap for it?
So the roadmap for it is very straightforward. At the group center, we can create value in only three ways. We get through our portfolio, through our synergies, and through our parenting. In terms of our portfolio, we have about 10 companies in our group that have more than $1 billion in revenues, another 6 companies that have more than $500 million in revenues. The first strategy to achieving these targets has to be that these 16 companies do really well for us, which means that they are going to focus on innovation as a way to drive our growth. They're going to embrace the digital world more holistically. And finally, they're going to be more international where it makes sense, not in every case, but where it makes sense. So these are the three things we have to make sure that our portfolio of 16 companies, which are the $500 million company plus, perform. Secondly, we have identified 4 clusters: defense and aerospace, realty and infrastructure, retail and finance, where we feel we have a lot more potential compared to what we have achieved. This is also the 4 clusters where we feel we can get the maximum synergies because Tata Group has pockets of excellence in these in different places, but if we bring it together and hopefully we can get a lot more out of it. Finally comes the parenting advantage. Now in the parenting advantage, there are things like improving the board governance. There are things like the Tata brand, which is one of the most valuable assets that we own, if not the most valuable asset we own. For us to get to 350 billion market cap in 2025, which is our estimate of what we would need to be among the 25 most valuable companies in the world, we have to grow at about 10 to 12% per annum in market cap and revenues. If you look at it, this is ambitious, yes, but if you look at our last 10-year growth, looking at the last financial year of March 2014, in the 10-year period, we achieved a revenue growth of 22% per annum and a market cap growth of 24% per annum. Our revenues went from about 18 billion to 103 billion at the group level, and our market cap went from 13 billion to 111 billion at the group level.
Are we seeing a huge reorganization of the group as well? Because the Tata Group is a large conglomerate. It's called a salt to software. So there are various companies with differentiated operations as well in various sectors. Are we going to see a more structured approach towards the entire Tata Group when we have a chat in 2025 once you have achieved all your goals?
You have to remember, something which is very important for others to understand us. We are not a PE company. We are not a portfolio investor. So when we think of portfolio, we don't think of what maximizes market cap. If it's not performing, get rid of it. That's not our approach. At the Tata Group, divestment for us is a very difficult and painful decisions. We don't take it lightly. So you haven't seen many divestments in the past and you won't see many in the future. So when you talk about massive restructuring, I'm not sure what we are talking about actually.
Okay.
Right? Now, what we will do is we will incubate new companies in new areas, in new sectors, and hopefully over the next months and years, you will hear about them as and when they get launched.
there has been a perception built around the group now that there is zero tolerance towards loss-making companies as well. You want every company to perform well. So we have seen certain asset sales that have taken place in steel, in power, and talks of telecom as well. Now, that of course is going to go forward as one of the strategies where you have to take certain tough decisions going forward.
We have no problem taking tough decisions, but tough decisions do not equal exits. We have tough decision is to stay in the business and turn it around. That's a lot tougher than selling. I mean, selling a business is the easiest thing to do. To work at it, to turn it around when situation seems hopeless, that is a much tougher decision. So I think what I'm trying to tell you is our instinct is to do that. It's not to sell. Selling is very easy. We don't sell. I don't know which sales you have seen, but the sales you have seen, I don't know what sales you have seen, but whatever sales you have seen, I doubt there could even be 1% of the total.
Can we say then, if we talk about more specifics, that telecom is an area where you would like to turn around rather than exit?
At my role of the group strategy is very clear. I talk about the portfolio. I do not talk about individual companies. It's the management of those companies that's going to turn it around, working with their boards. Right? We at the Tata Group are one shareholder. There are other shareholders. It's not for us to say what should happen with any individual company.
All right, as far as strategy of the group and the portfolio is concerned, aviation was one area where the group has taken a huge stride in the last 2 years. I mean, having two companies off the ground is not an easy task. So that has happened. How big are the plans for the aviation sector for the group? Because we have seen maximum failures in this particular group in the entire industry that we have seen. So how big are the plans there?
So firstly, we accept the fact, the premise of your question, that the aviation is a difficult sector. We accept the fact that it's hard to make money in that. If you look at customers, there is no doubt that the aviation sector will continue to grow dramatically in this country. There's a great need for people to fly, and the customer demand will continue to increase, the passenger numbers will continue to increase. So there is customer demand there. If you look at competitors, without speaking of any specific competitors, if you ask in market research, customers tell us in market research that they're unhappy with the offerings that are available. Many of the competitors are weak relatively. So there is a space from the customer demand perspective, there is a space from the competitor's perspective. Finally, it comes to our capabilities. We have a history of being in the aviation sector. We have partnered with what we think are the two best partners or the two best companies in this sector. So I think we have the capabilities. We think the competition is not as tough as it could be. And finally, we think that the customer demand is going to just, boom in this sector. So if you look at those three things, we have made an investment and we are very proud of the two companies that are doing.
All right. Aviation done. You have spoken about infrastructure as well. So there is a huge thrust given to that one in the group as well. Going forward, what are the plans there? Because we do not have a particular company being the flag bearer of infrastructure for the group. Are we going to see that evolve in the coming years?
Again, I don't want to talk about any individual company, but yes, realty and infrastructure, we see a potential there. Let's wait and see what plans we have for that, because at the moment, we are still, until the Indian economy doesn't pick up dramatically, I don't know what is going to happen on the infrastructure and the realty space. Okay, for the moment, it's a bit quiet, but if, as we hope, things do change, then of course we will make our share over there.
What I specifically wanted to understand from you, somebody who's taking care of the strategy, is you have a large conglomerate with over 100 companies which are operating. Now, a lot of them bring to table a lot of expertise towards the construction, towards the infrastructure space. Is there a way of maximizing this synergy by bringing those expertise together?
So that's why I said we have a cluster called Realty and Infrastructure. We will focus on that cluster. We will develop cluster plans and strategies for that. It's still work in progress.
We understand the cluster bit, but how is the cluster going to work? Because if there are going to be varied companies with separately listed identities, which could work only at an arm's length distance with other listed companies or other group companies, how does a cluster differentiate or help in maximizing? If you could give us some sense of that.
So firstly, you have to realize we are not like a conglomerate. In a conglomerate, if A wins more than B loses, it's a good decision, right? We are a business group. We have separate shareholders in separate companies. So if A wins and B loses, it's not a good deal. So we will only go in the cluster for those initiatives, for those programs, for those processes where both the companies are better off. Okay. So it is a challenge for the cluster leadership. I'm not the cluster leadership. It's the challenge for the CEOs and the cluster leadership to define, are there areas where by working together, all the companies in that cluster or all the companies who participate in that initiative will be better off.
Since you're bringing all the synergies together and maximizing the benefit of the group, is M&A going to be one of the vehicles, a choiced vehicle for taking this forward as well?
If you're going to grow, there has to be growth through market share increase. There has to be growth through growing with the market, the size of the market. There has to be also growth through M&As. When needed, when necessary, when we see good opportunities, we are always open to that.
All right. But when I talked about M&A, I also meant intra-group M&A as well, or M for that matter, like mergers.
If it makes sense at a certain stage, we will do it, but I don't know of any plans for M&A right now.
When do you think that growth will take precedence over everything else in terms of strategy? Because as we see in the economy worldwide and in India in many companies, a repair work and that mode is going on as the market understands it right now.
At the group level, we are incubating several companies to see in different sectors, to see, which could be a vehicle for growth in the future, right? That's how we do at the group level, right? Where it's for the companies to decide. I do not agree with you that we are not seeing growth. If I look at a company like TCS, if I look at JLR, if I look at, these companies are growing very well.
You're going to come up with a new ad campaign as well, as far as the brand positioning of Tata Group is concerned. Several times it has been said that you want Tatas to be the flag bearers of a brand from India across the world as well. How is that going to shape up?
Our brand has a uniqueness to it. And you have to remember that for us as the leadership, this Tata brand has been 140 years in the making and has been handed to us, right? It's the most valuable thing that's been handed to us with the culture that goes with it, right? In that sense, we at the Tata leadership, our most important job is keepers of this culture, right? If we lose that, if we lose what's unique to our group, because we understand that at Tata's, the business of business is beyond business, which is why we do things differently, which is why we attract our customers, which is why we attract our financial capital providers, which is why we attract our joint venture partners, we attract our suppliers, our dealers and our employees. We understand we are keepers of the culture. But it's not a contradiction to be a keeper of the culture as well as an agent of change. So we have inherited this culture and this unique brand over which has been 140 years in the making. When we as a leadership leave, whether it's in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years from now, our most important criteria by which to judge whether we have succeeded is whether we have left this group and this brand and this culture positioned to thrive and succeed and survive for another 100 years. That's how we judge ourselves.
Of course, Tata Group is a truly global company. 70% of the revenues come in from outside India. How is the global footprint going to improve going forward? What is the strategy there? Which are the areas and the geographies that we are going to focus more in the coming times?
We want to make sure that our group is well positioned in the growth areas of the future, which would be, for example, a Nigeria in Africa. It would be a Vietnam in Southeast Asia. Closer to home, it would be Myanmar and Bangladesh. These are all fast-growing economies, large economies, and we want to make sure that we are positioned in those economies, and we will provide support to our group companies if and when it makes sense for them to enter these geographies. Having said that, the four biggest countries for us are still USA, UK, China, and India. And that, of course, is the focus of a lot of the efforts of the group and the group companies, because those are the four largest countries in which we are present.
While you say that the journey is not complete of being a truly global company, does that also mean that somewhere down the line you would look at some of the companies listing overseas as well?
We don't have any plans for that as yet.
JLR is being talked about. I mean, that's just one of them.
Yeah, again, the press knows more than I know about these things. I have no idea about any listing of JLR. I've never heard of being talked about. So again, I can only tell you what I know. I can't tell you what the press knows.
Okay, at $35 billion is the kind of mandate given from top for the investments in the next 3 years. Is it right to presume that the 16 companies you mentioned, which are over $500 million, those are the ones who are going to invest this in the most maximum way? And which are the sectors that we could be looking at where most amount of this investment would be coming in?
So this investment is going to be made not only by us, but also by our group companies. So it will be in those 16 companies, but there's more companies in the portfolio which don't have $500 million plus. For example, our REALTY company doesn't get into that set. Some of our finance companies don't get into that set. So there'll also be new. Now, I don't want to talk about any specific sectors, but the sectors we are going to look at is the same sectors that everybody else is looking at. What's big today? Robotics is big, solar is big, wearables is big, e-commerce is big. I mean, it's the same sectors that everybody looks at, are the same sectors that we will look at and see if there's some reason to fund that. That's not going to require 35 billion. The 35 billion will be mostly into the existing companies.
All right. And going forward, which ones do you see as the biggest growth drivers? Of course, TCS is the jewel in the crown for Tata Group right now. At one point, Tata Steel was the flagship company. In the future of Tata Group, which are the companies or which are the sectors you see being the growth drivers for the entire group?
See, I can't say I'm looking at this company versus the other company. What I'm saying is, in a diversified portfolio, nobody could have predicted 5 years ago that JLR would be growing so fast and Tata Steel Europe would be struggling, right? So you can't predict that.
But there was a reason why you have differentiated with those 4 clusters that you have mentioned. So therefore, those could be the growth area, the focus area. That's what the understanding.
That's the wrong understanding that the press has. It was very clear in the chairman's speech that these are the 4 clusters we are looking for synergies. Because there are natural synergies in between this.
Right.
The 10 major companies we have are the major companies we have. They are going to be the focus all the time for us. But in addition, these are 4 clusters where we think it's natural for us to get synergies. We did not say, in fact, a speech, since I remember the speech, said these are not the only 4 growth drivers. Now, if you say those are the only 4 growth drivers, I'm not sure where to go with this.
No, thanks for that clarity. In fact, that puts in a lot of perspective into the whole thing. But financial services, I wanted to understand. What is the roadmap for growth in this particular area? You withdrew from banking license some time back. You said that the overall group is not structured, which can be acceptable for this kind of a venture going forward. So now, are we going to look at that space again? Payments Bank is coming up. What are the various things that we would be looking at? What are the ambitions?
You have to talk to the cluster head for more details on the finance cluster. All I can say is the finance cluster is a very important sector for us. The reason that the bank was not done was because of the regulations that were attached to that application, for that application to be approved. If and when it changes, we may relook at it. Having said that, without having a bank, I think the finance sector for the Tata Group can still be very successful, very big in the future. And we hope that by having this as a cluster, we will do better than we have done in the past 10 years, because clearly we are not satisfied with our performance.
Good, you brought up the customer centricity. That's another focus area. Now, you have such a large conglomerate with everybody focusing on customers, because that is the most important thing for any business. But the diversity makes it so difficult to have one roadmap for customer centricity.
We have my colleague, Harish Bhatt, who's in charge of the customer centricity program. He has not found any challenges about diversification of the group. What he has been able to develop is a customer promise that the Tata Group companies will make to all their customers, which is about, making sure that we understand the customer more deeply, making sure we develop the products and services that will delight them, and then making sure that when we have delivered them, that we give them a great experience. You see, so it doesn't matter which industry you're in, which sector you're in. These 3 things every company has to do: develop deep insights, deliver great products and services, and make sure that we have a great experience for our customers. And so that's really the point of the customer centricity exercise, is to say customer expectations are going up, competition is becoming better, we need to become better.
And digital is default. I'm quoting N. Chandrasekaran of TCS, and digital has been given a lot of emphasis by even Cyrus Mistry in his letter.
The customers are getting more connected, the customers are getting more social, right? The digital world is a reality. We are wanting to ensure that with the digital initiative, not only do we connect with the customers better, but digital is much more beyond customers. It means that we connect better with our dealers, we connect better with our employees through these platforms. It means we connect better with our suppliers through these platforms, the Internet of Things, the big data analytics. All of this is part of digital. Every business in the future will have to be a digital business. And we want to make sure that our companies and whatever help and support we can give from the group center to make sure that we are not, that we don't become only digital immigrants, but we also become digital, digital natives. And so part of our goal is to make sure, by talking about this, what the chairman is trying to say is every company has to be digital, because the future is digital.
Dr. Kumar, you have also spoken a lot about the invisible innovation of India. Is that going to become visible soon? And is Tata Group also going to play an important role in that?
So the thing to remember is that, right now what is so exciting about India is that finally the startup ecosystem is firing. And you see so much news on whether it's the e-commerce players or in the mobile space. You see so many startups coming. You see so many young people, instead of going to work in large companies, want to be in startups, right? So the ecosystem is in place. Having said that, industry, government and universities are not investing enough in R&D, including plus perhaps ourselves, right? So clearly we have to invest more in R&D for the visible products to come out of the other end. And so one part of our strategy is innovation and technology, which is why we have hired Gopi to head our as the CTO to head our technology and innovation, because we believe that innovation has to be a critical driver in the future. And our R&D centers, whether they are in the USA, whether they are in Netherlands, whether they are in India, are going to be a basic fundamental driver of growth and success for the Tata Group.
And talking about global factors, of course, you have businesses spread across so many countries. There are various developments overseas that have happened which impact your business as well. Which are those important factors that you are keenly watching out for?
If you look at USA, the great thing about the USA is that it's back vibrant economic growth in the US. So the US is going to be a driver of growth in this world, no doubt about it. UK and Europe, we are challenged. It's flat right now. It's very hard to see when it will turn around. There's still problems. So we are, anxiously watching it. We are hoping for a turnaround, but as of yet, we don't see the green shoots. When it comes to China, China last year grew at 7%. The interesting fact is that China at 7% growth adds more absolute dollars of growth, which is what's important to companies, than it did in 2007 when it was growing at 14%. So yes, China has slowed down, which is worrying for us because we have, of course, a lot of exposure to China. Having said that, the absolute dollar growth in China is still very high, and so we are still very bullish on China, just like we are bullish on America, just like we are bullish on India, right? The other thing that's the very big story in the global economy of last year, really the biggest story of the global economy of last year probably, is the fall in the oil prices. When oil prices fall, consumers have more disposable income, inflation goes down. Both of this leads to greater customer demand.
What are those management thoughts that you have which are at play in Tata Group at this point?
In terms of marketing, the big challenge is as consumers are becoming more social, more mobile, more connected, marketing has to change, right? And earlier, for example, we designed an advertisement. The job of the advertisement was, it's going to be on TV, people should not stray their eyes from the TV and watch it. Now when we design an advertisement, we have to design an advertisement which people will not watch, but which they will find intriguing enough to share with other customers, right? It's a fundamental shift, right? That instead of, and so we in marketing have to become much better. In strategy, the biggest challenge for a diversified group like ours is always the same. It's always the bigger you become, the harder you have to fight to stay focused on the few things that will make a difference.
All right. On that note, all the best to you, and thanks so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Find Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/etnow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at etnowlive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/etnow.